talking today to David Forbes of Shadow Films, who's made a documentary called the Cradock Four. David, who were the Cradock Four and what did they do?
Okay, the Cradock Four were four anti-apartheid activists. They were mostly school teachers who were trying to improve conditions in the townships in the early 1980s. But they were also very bright, clever people, and they were well organized, and they had the support of the community, and they were struggling for democratic ideals, which of course didn't go down well with the regime. And Matthew Goniwe, who was the leader of the group, was working underground for the banned African National Congress. He was involved with military training for cadres who were secretly leaving the country, and he was responsible for a whole lot of confrontation, so the regime decided to murder him.
He had both clearly a public and an underground role.
Yes. So they decided to murder him, and so what happened was they were abducted one night in the middle of winter. They were stabbed more than 60 times in a very, very brutal murder by the security police. Their bodies were then burned, their vehicle was burned, and they tried to then make it look like it was black on black violence. So they covered it up, and it only started to come out in 1991. They were murdered in 1985. The truth only started to emerge in 91. There was an expose in the media, and then after that there was of course the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where a whole lot of policemen cobbled together a story which was only half the truth, and so they were actually denied amnesty.
So which half of the truth was missing?
The truth about what really happened. They had a story about what they did, but there was no explanation of several anomalies in the case, such as why the bodies of Matthew and Fort, who were the two key leaders, were found only a few days later after the whole area had been searched where they were found, and why their bodies were burnt, but their bodies had their underwear which had not been burnt, which obviously suggested that they were burnt without any clothes on, and then the underwear was added afterwards. So there were all of these stories and weird things. There was a roadblock where they were actually caught, which was covered up and cleaned by the police. Records were altered. I mean, when I tried, I had to take the Department of Justice to court to get access to public records that had been heard in open court. An absolutely unprecedented situation. In the end, they actually backed down, and we settled out of court, and we then had it made an order of the High Court. So I got access in the end to the records.
And do you feel you got to the bottom of what occurred?
No, not really. There were so many stories, and it's a really complicated story. So for filmmaking, one has to simplify the story. So I used the only official version of the murder that there was, but then showed that it had holes in it.
Yeah.
And they were denied amnesty. And 25 years later, none of them have been brought to justice.
So they're still free?
They're still walking free. Unbelievable that the ANC government has allowed this, and in fact obstructed me during the making of the film as well. So it leads one to question a whole lot of issues. One is about official records being altered in the National Archives by members of national intelligence and secret services. The other is the deal that was made at the time of our transition to democracy between the ANC and the government of the time, the Nationalist Party, as to if we don't wash your dirty linen in public, you won't wash ours. So there was very much, I think,
so
that
they just wanted
kind of
it
agreement.
to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it raises lots of issues around freedom of speech, around human rights, about reparations, about, you know, the families of these four men, none of whom ever received any counseling whatsoever.
Yes. And did the policemen ever express any remorse for that?
Yeah, some of them asked for forgiveness and stuff. You know, and the widows were, you know, they really tried to come to terms with it, but some of them are just still. One of them, whenever I tried to interview her, she would just break down and tremble and shake. And, you know, in the end, I thought, you know, I actually can't put her through this anymore. It's just too traumatic for her. The others were really brave. I would do interviews with them, and they would weep and scream with grief and stuff. This is like 20 years later, you know. It was also traumatic for me because I was sort of asking them to relive. But I think in a way perhaps it was also healing for them. It's a very difficult area to be working in.
And how well was the film received globally?
It's been very well received everywhere. I've never had actually a bad comment about it. Everyone has always said, wow, it really took us back to that time, because I did some dramatic recreations, which I did in a way that they weren't sort of show and tell. They were sort of more generic, and they fitted in really well with the archive that I was able to find from the time. So people really felt that it took them back to those days, and that it was a really important story that I told. It's one of the few, and it was really one of the ones that I think really outraged millions of people in this country, and it dragged on through 2 inquests that were whitewashes. No one was responsible. You know, it just went on and on and on. The cover up right until 91.